And so my name is Bernadette Joy Cruz-Mallion. You can just call me Bernadette. I am the head of client engagement and marketing at BrightDime, and I am here to share with you my story of how I paid off $300,000 of debt, and hopefully can share some tips and things that might be helpful for you and or your employees or clients. What I want to cover is to just share with you a little bit about my story, give you some tips that might be practical for you in real time, and then to tell you a little bit more about how you can get ongoing support by partnering with BrightDime. As the webinar is entitled, have paid off $300,000 of debt, including student loans and mortgages. My husband and I started this journey in 2016, so 4 years ago. My first foray into finance was actually as an HR professional in HR in 2008 in New York City in financial services. And so I started my career flying around to different offices and doing the opposite of what I thought I would be doing, which was telling people they didn't have a job anymore. Got me very interested in personal finance and made me realize that if I want to make sure that I'm financially secure, that I want to have the best plan possible and not necessarily rely on anyone else. I went back to school and got an MBA because I thought, like many people, that that was a great ticket into kind of career progression. Wouldn't trade that experience for the world, absolutely loved it, but it landed me in $70,000 of student loan debt. And on top of that, I was in my, I would like to lovingly call it my HGTV addiction phase, and not only had one house, but decided I was going to be Joanna from Fixer Upper and have two Fixer Uppers to fix, and found myself coming from no debt to $300,000 of debt in a very short amount of time. The first thing was I just didn't know enough. And when I say not enough, I had no idea how much debt I had really signed up for. I really did not understand the consequences of it. I was very used to just signing my very long name on a lot of forms without really understanding the terms and conditions of them. And aside from that, I personally, and I don't know if any of you can relate to this, didn't receive a lot of financial education growing up. Even with doing, an MBA, a lot of the education in a business program is how you manage money for a business, but I never had a class on how to teach me how to manage my own money on a day-to-day basis. And so I felt like I didn't have all the knowledge that I wish I had in order to make really good decisions. I didn't have a solid plan on how I would pay off this debt. I signed up for the debt very willingly without really thinking through, like, how am I actually going to pay this all back? And when I figured out that I had $72,000 of student loans and that the normal time frame to pay it off was 10 years or a decade, I said, I'm already on the hook for 2 mortgages at 30 years. The thought of adding another decade's worth of debt just didn't sit right with me. And so I wanted to do something different about it. And the last piece, which I think a lot of personal finance tends to overlook, is I was completely overwhelmed. I felt pretty ashamed of what I got myself into. I was kind of embarrassed to tell people that. And I didn't really have anyone that I felt comfortable talking about it with. And even if I did, want to talk about it with someone, I wasn't sure who to turn to. And would be told, I should go talk with a financial advisor, but the financial advisors weren't that interested in helping me with my student loan debt because I wasn't necessarily asking them for investment advice. If any of this resonates with you at all, and you're looking for, ways to improve on whether it's debt or, just your personal finances in general, these are some seemingly very simple tips, but not as easy as it looks, it turns out. And I learned it the hard way. So the first thing is to get organized. Sounds very simple, but I can't tell you, when I first figured out that I had that amount of student loans, I didn't even necessarily know how many student loans they were. I didn't necessarily know what the terms were for each of them or the interest rates. And on top of it, I was also managing several accounts, bank accounts, credit card accounts, investments accounts, just my regular utility bills, all of those things. And so when you're trying to think of how you're going to tackle that amount of debt, it can be really overwhelming when you don't even know where everything is. So even if you don't have any extra money right now to be paying off debt, like, like the amount that we did, just getting organized and streamlining your finances and knowing where all your accounts are and knowing how much each of them are worth is a really, really good place to start. And the second thing that I would say, sounds super cliche, is to get on a budget. And I will fully admit, I was one of those people who felt like, okay, budgeting is for people who are broke or who, don't want to have any fun, and budgeting is all about restricting, and I just want to live my life. I want to be able to do all the things I want to do. I don't want to have to tell myself no. But the truth is that budgeting is really what helped us pay off $300,000 of debt in 30 years. There is no way we would have been able to accomplish that amount if we weren't consciously budgeting on a regular monthly basis. And so if you don't have a budget at all, then the first thing that you can start with is just figuring out what your monthly expenses look like. And I would start with not just hypothetically what your expenses look like, but look at the last month. So we're almost at the end of September. If you do nothing else today but to go back and look at how much money you've spent and what you've spent it on in the month of September, you're probably ahead of 80% of the people that we talk to already. And for me, budgeting is not about tracking every single cent to the penny and, slapping myself on the wrist and then doing the same thing over again. Budgeting is really about planning forward and being conscious of where your money goes and having a plan for how you're going to spend that money in the next 30 days. And I like to think of it on a monthly basis. Number 3 is to learn from people who actually know what they're doing. Again, sounds very, very simple, but I can't tell you how much unsolicited advice I have gotten over the years from people telling me anything and everything about what I should be doing with my money, what I should be doing, what kind of loan I should get, what kind of investments I should do, And to be honest, I used to take a lot of that advice because I figured if someone was giving me that advice, then they must know what they're talking about. But the truth is, just because someone tells you something doesn't necessarily make it the right advice for you. There's a lot of generic advice that is given around personal finance. And so I strongly encourage you to look for divergent opinions and look for people who have financial situations that are similar to yours and or that you're aspiring towards. And by aspiring, I don't mean that they have, fancy cars and big houses and have a perfectly Instagrammable life. What I'm talking about is, are there people that you have that you can talk to that you're not ashamed to talk about money, that you're not ashamed to talk about debt, who maybe also has student loans, who maybe has credit card debt, and who can provide you some really practical advice without being overly prescriptive. And my number one piece of advice and who to ask advice for is to ask them, what their financial situation looks like so that you can make an informed decision as to whether or not that person, has experience that you want to learn from. So, a lot of the things that I happen to talk to people about, unsurprisingly, is how to get out of debt. And that's because I myself have gotten out of a lot of debt. So find people that you feel comfortable with, that isn't going to shame you about asking those questions, and that has experience that you can relate to. The key to really managing your finances and your money is that it is not a one-time, one quick hit kind of thing. It is an ongoing journey, and having a regular commitment to it for the long term. If it's once a month, if it's once a week, if you're doing nothing right now, and even if it's once a year, starting somewhere where you are continually committing to doing these 3 things, getting organized, budgeting, and learning from other people on a regular basis is really how you can make some serious progress versus just treating it like a one and done deal. Some of the things that has really been great about becoming debt-free is that it's allowed me to manage my time and pick work that I really love to do, like having these kinds of webinars with you, doing things that I really love. So outside of talking about money, I absolutely love to bake. I love to do arts and crafts. I am very much into Korean pop music, and I have a lot more time and money to spend on those things that I enjoy. And I know there's a lot of things to be stressed out about right now. And, you know, to the chagrin of a lot of the folks who advise my husband, and I, you guys are crazy. Why would you pay off your debt and your house? Like, you don't have to do that. Everyone has debt. Turns out that not having a debt or not having a mortgage in middle of a pandemic has been quite a blessing. So there's a lot of things to be stressed out about the world, but money doesn't necessarily always have to be one of them. Have any questions that you'd like me to answer about anything at all? Feel free to put it in the box. We have our first question here. So it says, Carrie, thank you for your question. Do you recommend not putting money in your 401k until you pay off your debt? That is a wonderful question. And the answer is, it depends. For the most part, a lot of the traditional advice that I've heard in the past is you should never stop putting into your 401k. The truth for me personally is my husband and I decided that we were going to pause in our 401k while we were paying off debt. But the caveat that I will have on that is that we had a very specific and finite timeline to when we were paying off debt, and we were sticking to our plan. And so one of the reasons why that worked really well for us is because we were so diligent on our debt payoff plan, specifically for the student loans. We had $72,000 of student loans, and our plan was to pay it off in 2 years. And we actually ended up paying it off in less than a year, which I understand totally sounds crazy. But as soon as we were done with the student loans, we went right back to investing. And what a lot of the people who told us that we shouldn't do that did not anticipate is that we would pay it off as quickly as we did. And that not only when we went back to investing, that we didn't just go back to investing like the minimum amount on our 401k, but we went to maxing out our 401k and our IRAs after we paid off debt, because we had a lot more money to work with then. You're welcome, Carrie. Anonymous question. Do you recommend buying a house or renting if you do not know if you will stay in the city for a long time? Great question. This is a very common question as well. And again, everything, by the way, everything that I'm saying is totally just my personal opinion and should be taken as such. I have to say that. And so my personal opinion is, if you do not know if you'll be staying in that particular city for a long time, I would not suggest buying a home. Husband and I learned that the hard way. So my husband did exactly that. He bought a home. He was, he had the money to do it. However, he didn't put a ton of money down on it. And lo and behold, what he did not expect was that he was going to meet this woman and end up marrying her and moving to another city. And so he had the home for less than 2 years. And unfortunately, at the time, he had bought it right at the top of the market. And then what happened in 2008 happened. And we ended up having to take a $10,000 loss on it for him to move. And so if you're not entirely sure that you're going to be staying in a particular city for a long period of time, I would strongly recommend, me personally, I would strongly recommend renting until you figure out what you're going to do. So even for myself, my husband and I, we moved to Charlotte, North Carolina about 7 years ago from New York City. We weren't entirely sure that this was going to be a permanent move. And so the first thing that we did was we rented for a year before we bought our first home. I hope that helps answer your question. Cami, personal question. No problem. I'm fine with personal questions. Do you live off of one salary? Answer, yes. One of the reasons we were able to pay off debt so quickly was because we transitioned mentally and in reality with our budget of living off of one salary. And so one example of how we did do that is when we decided to buy our first home together, we based our budget and we got our pre-approvals for mortgage based off of one salary, not both of our salaries. Because if we did use both of our salaries, we would have gotten approved for a way bigger, way more expensive house than what we could truly afford. And we wanted the security to know that even if one of us lost our jobs, which we had experienced already, that we would still be able to pay for the mortgage. And so we've kind of lived off that philosophy in everything that we do. So what's nice about the philosophy is that knowing that we can afford everything within our lifestyle based off of one salary, the other salary is allocated towards savings or things that we are really excited to do, like traveling. If you can see my screen here, getting the support that you need to reduce financial stress, that is exactly what BrightDime does. How we really differentiate from other financial wellness, and I see a lot of it right now. I see a lot of people who say, well, we already have a 401k provider, and so we already have financial wellness. But as I'm sure some of you have experienced, the 401k providers are not necessarily helping people tackle everyday issues like the ones that I'm talking about today. And so through BrightDime, employers are able to sign up their employees through our platform to get individual financial coaching, tools to organize their money, and ways to educate themselves that are not selling them stuff, right? So let me show you a perfect example. So this is a real employee from one of our clients. We're calling her Alex for for privacy purposes, but Alex is an employee at one of our financial services clients, and she currently lives paycheck to paycheck. She typically puts all of her expenses on her credit card to get by. She has over $50,000 of student loans and has credit card debt. She doesn't have a specific timeline to pay that off, and she is completely overwhelmed on how to even start saving. She makes a decent salary. She makes about $60,000 a year. But aside from that, one of the things that she came to us said that she would love to be able to curb her spending. And if and when we ever get to do this again, she said, I would love to be able to save up for future travel, but doesn't even think it's possible with how much debt she has on her plate. And so what happened was that, and this is Eugenia, to your question, she attended an awesome webinar. I'd like to say it's awesome. And a leader from her company also helped partner with us to deliver the webinar. So aside from me talking, we actually had a leader from their company to show the employees that they're really, when they say that they really care about their financial wellness of their employees, they really mean it. And so we had a live chat between the leader and myself as a coach, and we talked and answered questions just like this. And upcoming webinar topics that we are planning for the rest of the year is doing more of these, how to become debt free, how to do some basic budgeting, questions about credit, and how to finish the year strong and get ready for a new calendar year. Much in the same style as we're doing today. And so she attended one of these webinars. She got really excited and she got onto the platform and started talking with a BrightDime coach. And so after she received access through her employer, she logged onto our platform and she immediately got into the live coaching. And all of her coaching is done via chat. And the reason that we do chat is because understandably, money is still a very, kind of sensitive topic for a lot of people. And some people are not necessarily ready to talk to someone face-to-face about it. The other great thing about chat is that we are able to kind of track our conversations over time with an employee so that there's a level of accountability and a level of progress that we can look at because we have everything from our previous chats, and that we can have also potentially multiple coaches helping with the same employee. So for example, while like my expertise happens to be very much in things like budgeting and debt, if someone had a question about, like 401ks, that was very specific, we might grab another expert to help answer those questions. So after she started chatting with a BrightDime coach, then she organized all of her accounts on the BrightDime platform. So she uploaded all of her accounts so that she could see all of her financial picture in one place, which that in of itself was a big change for her because she had no idea where all of her stuff was. And one thing that was super helpful about that was that once she had all the data there, she could really see what was going on. So for example, she initially came in and said, I have, 40,000 of student loans. Once she uploaded the information, she realized she actually had $50,000 of student loans. And so $10,000 is a big difference in terms of a plan. And so having it all in one place made it way easier to organize. And then she got on a plan working on a budget every month. And now she actually meets, happens to be with me, on a monthly basis. We have a regular scheduled chat right before she gets her monthly paycheck to walk through what she plans to do for the next month with her expenses and starting to put together a plan to pay down her credit cards and to also start, saving for travel. One thing that she didn't anticipate was that looking at her information and looking at her finances, and I was able to do that because I'm able to see it with her permission when she uploaded it on the platform, was that I noticed that she did not really have an emergency fund in place. And that was part of the reason that she was perpetually in credit card debt. So one of the goals before we even tackled the credit card debt was to help her build an emergency fund and plan towards that. And I'm happy to report that she started a couple of months ago, and by the end of this month, she will have a fully funded emergency fund. And if she continues her plan, she will be on target to pay down her credit card debt by the end of the year. And one of the other things that I mentioned is that, money can be an intimidating topic for a lot of people. And so even if someone is not necessarily ready to talk to a coach yet, BrightDime can still be a really valuable resource because they can still find content based on real chats we've had with employees in the past. And so if you go into the BrightDime platform, we have a library of articles that our expert team has written based on all the different topics that we've gotten. And so here are some of the things that we've written articles about. So if someone is not necessarily ready to chat yet, they can search for those questions and still learn about that in a non-intimidating way. And so we've had a lot of great stories and anecdotes. I personally just get a lot of joy out of helping people kind of relieve a lot of that stress. And I feel so much of that because I was in those shoes before. And so that is very much how our team operates, is that we all really are part of this mission because we can see, what it can be like to not have as much stress about money. So if you are interested in learning more about BrightDime, this is our team. Like I mentioned, I'm the head of marketing and client engagement. If you are interested in presenting to clients, or you are an employer and want to potentially look at providing the solution to your employees, I am happy to connect you with our business development team. And you can simply do that by replying back to the email that you got this invitation for, and I will connect you to the right people. And the beauty of our program is that unlike other benefits, we are really flexible in terms of our rollout, and we're pretty nimble. We can get up and running in less than 30 days for most people and for most clients. And so that is it. And we are right on time at 1:30. So I will hang back. If there are any other questions, you can go ahead and feel free to put in the chat. Otherwise, I so appreciate you taking the time out of your busy day today. And it was very nice to chat with all of you. And I hope that we get to interact again soon. Bye.